Are there basic ground rules to life? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the Northwoods talking about making life better one small step at a time. This idea is that most people, I think, don't fail at life. I don't want to say everyone fails at life, but feels like their life is going in a bad direction. Not because they weren't smart enough or talented enough or lucky enough. They almost fail or fail at moments because no one ever gave them the ground rules of life. I always joke that I was raised by wolves. I learned through books and taught myself a lot about how to live life. I wasn't given a lot of guidance on that. And in thinking back, I try to think of what are some fundamental ground rules for life that will help us make life better. You know, we spend 12 years in grade school and learning history and algebra and how to diagram a sentence. And no one really ever sits down to us, except hopefully our parents do, to tell us how we should set ourselves up for a life of success, or so that our lives don't fall apart on us. And it's one of those things, bad financial decisions in your 20s can follow you for decades. Nobody tells you that your health is dramatically easier to maintain than it is to rebuild it. And no one tells you that, in a sense, a compass is the thing that will keep our lives from drifting side to side if we have this internal compass inside of us. So that's what we're going to talk about today in these types of rules of life. And the not kind of rules about, like I said, there's some rules out there. There's always this very classic one, right? Graduate high school, get married, have kids in that order. Rules of life, right? That's one version of that path. But today we're going to talk a little bit about some other rules that will help you build a life. And even if you haven't been doing these things, you can do them at any time, day in and day out. This is the general path you're going to go. And some of them feel a little bit obvious, but that's kind of the point, is that just because they're obvious doesn't mean we should ignore them. So let's first of all take a look at the first one, the foundations. Is rule number one, don't get into consumer debt. The number one reason is consumer debt, credit cards, personal loans for stuff that you can't afford. We live in a buy now, pay for later life in the world. I think it's true. And it's one of those quiet life wreckers out there. It is so dangerous. It's invisible. You swipe the card, you shop, nothing bad happens. They let you take that thing home, right? And you're borrowing from your future self. Essentially, you are denying your future self whatever it is, money that you would have, and it compounds because of the interest rate on it. So a person who carries $5,000 of credit card debt just for 5 years, that means that they pay $5,000 back, but they pay back interest rates. They're not paying back the money. That adds to your stress. It reduces your options. It could have been something that you could have been doing with the money usefully at all. And the ground rule here is pretty simple. If you can't pay for it in cash or pay for it the balance at the end of the month, you can't afford it. Now, that's a discipline in life, and it's applied through, consistently. It will change your entire life. I do think that there are situations where people invest in a business. They invest in a moderate car when they need a car to get around. Those kinds of things. You have to take a little bit of look at that, but most of the things we buy on consumer credit are not things that are important to our lives. Usually there are things that are silly to our lives, and that's what's causing us to go down. Ground rule number two, live below your means. Not equal to your means, below your means. So that's the idea, is the gap between what you earn and what you spend. The gap is where the freedom lives. It's not about being cheap, and it's about being intentional. That every dollar you don't spend impulsively is a dollar that can work for you. Invest in, save for your future, allow you to have years where you're not working at the end of your life. Maybe even invest in a house or buy something that actually matters. But lifestyle inflation trap is real. We get a raise and we spend that raise. We earn a little bit more and we spend a little bit more. And we end up in the same place. So our actual raises, we get another job. We don't improve. We get a nicer car. We buy more toys. and we have struggles resisting that. But if you can do that, live in the same place with the same spending, even though you got more money one way or the other, or maybe, someone left you an inheritance, that's your future, right? That's exactly, I think in the book, Getting Better with Money, they called it acorns. How I got out of my financial rut is every time I got a pay hike, I lived exactly the same as I didn't increase my lifestyle. I didn't get a nicer car. I didn't increase the things in my life. I stayed the same, and I started putting away my raises. And that's actually how I got to a retirement fund, how I got myself out of debt. The other part of it too is protect your health early and don't let it drift too far. This is one that you want to spend a little extra time in. Most people don't feel the consequences of their health decision until they're too deep into it. Your body is the vehicle for everything that you do in your life, your energy, your mood, your ability to show up for the people you love, to do the things you want to do, your productivity, how you do at your job, and it all runs on your physical health, and we treat it very much like it's an option. One of the things that is interesting about it is until I was 45 years old, I was an entirely healthy human being. My labs were great. I could do anything I wanted to do. I could get around the way I wanted to get. And somewhere right around 45, all of a sudden I had high cholesterol, diabetes. I screwed up my ankles, all those things that happens. And it's dramatically easier to maintain your health than it is to reverse it. A lot of times we just don't pay the cost when we're younger. And I kind of joked with someone. I said, getting older is almost about like all those good practices people told you to do in your life. Eat healthy, eat real food, exercise. All of a sudden you get a little bit older and those things become mandatory. And it's hard. It is harder to lose 60 pounds than it is to just maintain that weight. I am just got off of a battle where I lost nearly 80 pounds. And it's a difficult, lifelong battle I've had my whole life. It's physically, mentally draining, emotionally draining. And eventually, like I said, it does catch up with you. I see people in their 20s and they say, well, see me, I'm overweight, but I'm a healthy human being. And the message in your head is for now you are. And so it's easier to get in shape when you're younger. It's easier to lose weight when you're younger. You don't know this, but eventually your metabolism slows down. So it is just easier to lose it earlier, to maintain it your whole life, or, to get fit than it is to neglect your body the whole time and then get fit later. The ground rule is, in general, with all these things, is don't be perfect. You're never going to be perfect, but just don't let things get too far gone. Move your body, sleep, eat real food, don't ignore your symptoms, go to the doctor and get checkups. These are not luxuries. These are the way we live a healthy life. The next principle I want to talk about is really the drift principle. I don't know if that's I'm wondering if I made that up, but the idea is that you're going to start to see this drift principle once you understand what it is. Most of life's problems are not sudden events. They're slow drifts that go unnoticed until it becomes a crisis. You don't wake up one day $40,000 in debt. You don't wake up one day 70 pounds overweight or out of shape. You drift there, skipping a workout, one workout at a time, swiping the credit card, one wipe at a time. You don't wake up one day in a broken marriage. You drift there. Unaddressed issues of resentment. You don't end up with bad relationships with your friends where they separate one day. It is a drift over time. And that drift is slow, and so we don't tend to see it. The crisis always feels sudden to us. Well, that person, they just told me they hated me. What happened? It's a drift. And these small incidents become large crises. Small corrections are cheap. Big corrections are expensive in time, money, energies, and sometimes you can't get relationships back. So if you can fight the drift, you will do better on almost every aspect of your life. Rule number 4 is catch problems early in every area of life. Whether you're looking at a nuisance debt, you have "Oh, man, I just have, like, this $1,000 or this, $3,000 of credit card debt I never can get rid of." Deal with it. Or, "I just put on this 10 pounds and, well, it's just 10 pounds." Or, "My relationship is, we're fighting a little bit more, but, we'll come through this okay." Bad relationships, like I said, take a long time to reshape once they've gone that badly. So don't be that person, I guess, that waits till things become problem. Start addressing problems 2 to 3 years early before you think you have to. Same thing with your career, your health, your friendships, your home. Uh, Disorder compounds into more disorder. A little chaos eventually becomes a lot of chaos, and the lot of chaos is very hard to control. Rule number 5 is don't let resentment and discontentment with other people build over time. In any close relationship, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or a partnership, address the small grievances that stack up. You let one thing go, and then it becomes another. That person got mad at me because I'm always, I don't know, make somebody correcting their grammar. It's bigger is that you're probably correcting that person all the time, and they're probably getting annoyed by it. Find a pathway forward with that person. Look to that person if to help you solve that problem. The fixes don't often have to be dramatic. They have to just be early and honest and get at them before they calcify, because it is harder to repair those relationships. And I think the same thing is true of loneliness. Social isolation tends to compound too. The longer you go without meaningful connections, the harder they become to build again. You can build them again. Of course you can. You can find new friendships. But it is better to maintain your relationships. They require tending, like a garden, right? You have to clean out the weeds and water and fertilize it and grow it over time. But don't become so used to either these battles we have with other people or loneliness where we just don't have other people. Ground rule number 6, do regular life audits. Maybe once or twice a year, sit down with yourself and assess the areas that are going on in your life. Your health, your money, your relationship, your job, your personal growth. You don't judge yourself, but what you're trying to do is notice the drift. I used to be the person who, read books on how to make myself better. Or I used to be the person who exercised quite seriously and I just sort of let that drift. Or I used to be the kind of person who showed up at my work and worked hard, and now I just sort of let it go. That other person got the raise, I didn't get the raise, and I'm just going to start to drift. Don't make this a real complicated exercise. This can be just you, with maybe a journal or some notes and a cup of coffee or hot cocoa, and you just look at exactly where it is your life is going at that particular point. So nothing goes unexamined too long. I think the places where I've seen people fall away the most is when, maybe like thinking about praying. Like I said, I have religious podcasts, I'm a Christian, and someone who prayed every day and had that connection with God. And then suddenly they wake up 10 years later and they go, gosh, I haven't prayed in 10 years. And now they have no relationship. Or, like I said, the relationships with your family or friends or your children or your relationship with your work people. Maybe you're not quiet quitting, but maybe you are and you don't even notice it happening. So just a little bit of self-reflection. I'm starting a new project this year I use Notion, which is an application, and bought a journal from this. And I'm going to start doing this a little bit more regularly. The last section is to have a compass. And I think this was the thing that saved me throughout my turbulent years, is I always had a really good compass in life. I knew which direction I needed to go. And anything, despite the fact that I was ADHD, I was kind of lazy, I had no direction, with some things in life, I knew overall what the direction was in my life. There were non-negotiables that protected me that I did as a kid because I didn't want to get stuck, stuck at home, stuck in this life, stuck in a life of drug abuse, from another person, those kinds of things. I always had a very solid compass. Having a strong compass will keep you from drifting. It'll help you catch things early on, and that will prevent you from having that drift. when you know this hard direction that you're going, moving in life intentionally, that's the most important rule right there. So know where it is you're actually going, the direction you're going, and what things are non-negotiable in your life. Rule number 7 is actually figure out what you value as opposed to what you're supposed to value. A lot of people are chasing other people's definitions of a good life, their parents' definition, their peer group's definition, and they're knocking themselves out trying to get there. They arrive at it and they feel empty because the destination wasn't really their destination. It was some sort of imagined thing they have. Some people dream of this financial life. I want to live a house like my parents have. I want to live in a car like my parents have. I want my parents' life and I want it right now. And they do everything they can to get it just because that was the idealized image they have. I live in a smaller house. It's 1,500 square feet. It has everything I need. I have a gym over here. I have my craft room / recording room right here. And I have a nice bedroom that is quiet and peaceful. And my living room is decent. But it is exactly what I need. And if I had knocked myself out to buy a better, bigger, whatever house, I think my life would have gone worse for it. So, start to take an actual look at what your life looks like. Not Instagram's version of it, not TikTok's version of it, a realistic one. What are you trying to work for? What relationships do you want to have in your life? What does Tuesday look like for you when it's a good Tuesday? And if you can't answer those questions right now, you might not have your compass yet. You don't have your plan together yet. And so at that point, every path looks equally valid. I could live in a giant house and be in debt up to my earballs. I could live in a decent sized house and be happy and content. I could travel the world and never own a house, but maybe you don't even know. And if you don't have your compass in place yet and you don't know what it is you actually want, every path will look valid, like I said, and that means you'll end up wherever the wind takes you. I used to have this belief that I was in Firefly, Alan Tudyk said, I'm a leaf on the wind. I thought I was a leaf on the wind. And then I saw, no, I had a really strong compass and I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And I got to that place. Ground rule number 8, have a realistic view of your future self, not a fantasy, but realistic picture of who you'll be 10, 20 years from now. The people who can see the future more clearly and then follow through on those daily decisions that get you to your future, you will have that accountability. You will feel like you are moving towards that future self. If you skip that particular kind of workout, you blow your budget, you gain weight, so that you can't go on the hikes you wanted to go. Let me say it this way. I have always known my whole life the one thing I love doing more than anything else is hiking. And every single time in my life, no matter how wayward or a leaf on the wind I was, I knew that I really wanted to continue being hiking and being mobile. And that was part of my future me, my faith. While I wasn't there all the time and I didn't read the Bible like I did, I knew that the future me understood the person that God was making me into. I understood that I wanted to be able to retire at some point and I needed to have that budget in place. I understood future me, even though I was lacking in some direction right there. At some point, that future you will help you keep that goal in mind. So it's important that you learn who that person is and keep that person in mind often. Rule number 9 is know what enough looks like to you. I think one of the biggest ways that people drift, we think about people drifting away from their goals or away from something, is sometimes they actually drift towards a thing. And that's something that no one will ever tell you. We drift towards, I have to have more money or more status, more stuff. I have to have these luxury vacations because that's when I'll arrive. That's when I'll be the person. When I go to this tropical island and live in this resort, hut thing, I'll know, I know I've arrived. And what happens is they also drift because they never actually arrive in the thing that's meant for them. They financially keep drifting And at some point, I sort of even realized in my own career, at one point I was very ambitious. I wanted raises and promotions. And then I started getting them and I started realizing that as I got promoted, I made more money, I had more responsibilities, but at some point I realized this is actually where I want to be. I'm actually happy with what I have right now. The work level, the promotion level, it allows me enough freedom in my life, enough time with my friends, and I have enough stuff and house and, money to make my budget work. And if you never know what enough looks like, you could really just sit there and give up the things that are really important in your life for things that are not going to make your life better or make your life more close to God or close to your family. We get sold down the river, I think, when it comes to TikTok and Instagram about lifestyles. And I think you have to figure out what it means to you. And that doesn't mean you give up on ambition. It means you'll know when you've actually landed. It means that you will feel satisfied without feeling like you always need something more. Ground rule number 10, have a small set of personal principles and live by them. Not a long list, but maybe 3 to 5 statements that define who you are, how you move through this world. The decisions that you will make are going to be hard in your life. But when you have these operating principles and it's a little bit like the compass, I know when I'm telling myself the truth. I know when other people are telling me the truth. And I know when these principles are eviscerated, it gets uncomfortable. And that might mean something like I show up for people I care about. I don't make financial decisions based on fear or ego. When anything else is uncertain, your principles are going to be the needle of the compass. And that's the point. They're always going to point to home. For me, I am a Christian. And for me, getting closer to God and moving in that direction is always going to be my guiding principle. So when I think about how I run my life in general, should I fight with this person or should I not fight this person? Oh, it says in Romans, as much as is up to you, live at peace with everyone. Okay, I'm not going to fight with that person. I'm going to give up on this particular thing. In the end, this is all about you playing the long game. Stuff compounds on itself, whether you're doing a habit, a skill, you're gaining a reputation, you're building a relationship. So you start something small that gets better and better with consistent small steps every time. The earlier you do it is, of course, better, but it is never too late. This whole show is built on the idea that one small step at a time. That means literally, when it comes to these rules, you don't have to make one giant leap. You can take one small step, one consistent step over and over again in that same direction. It's like compounding interest, right? The more you do, it builds on itself. So the more I build myself as a spiritual human being closer to God, it builds me as a working person. It builds me as a healthy person. As I build myself as a healthy person, it builds myself as a financial person, as a spiritual person. They all come together and build me into the person that I think I want to become. And I think that God is trying to build in me. The person who reads 30 minutes a day for 10 years has read thousands of hours more than the person who reads on occasion. The person who exercises 3 times a week for 20 years is a different physical being than the person who does it for a little bit and then stops. Small, consistent beats big and sporadic every time. And so it's important that when we start to develop the final skill of finishing things, like me, I used to be a great starter, good at starting things, terrible at finishing or following through. And instead, now I finish things. Even if it's imperfect, even if it takes a while, I am going to get that advantage in life because I actually finished now the things that I started. I actually do the goals that I try to do. And a goal done, even if it's imperfect, is more valuable than something that is perfect and unfinished. So I hope that helps you, bring these rules to life. They're not very complicated. It's not some big secret. They require something that's modern life specifically undermines: patience, intentionality, delayed gratification. We live in a world that is optimized to get you to spend money you don't have and eat foods that make you feel terrible and scroll through the rest of your life instead of acting. The ground rules are an antidote to all of those behaviors, one small step today. Pick one area in your life and ask yourself honestly, am I drifting? It's not, am I perfect? Is it, I'm drifting away from it? Am I ignoring it? Is it fading from my life? And if the answer is yes, you don't have to fix everything today. You just need to notice it. Once you start noticing it, then you can be able to start course correcting. And you'll be able to start seeing more clearly when you're drifting or whether you're getting back on course. Appreciate you being out there. I hope this resonates with you. If you have something that you want to say to me, you can say it right down here. You can say hi, give a comment, subscribe to this channel. I appreciate you being out there. And you can drop me an email at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Thanks so much and have a great week.